This brings us to the final part of this first step, which is where you actually generate your list of fiction genres. So what genres are represented in your collection? You probably can answer that now since the inventory. You also can get lists of genres online, such as the one pictured here from Follett, which lists fiction genres by level, elementary, middle, and high school. For my genreification project, I certainly looked at lists like this, and I looked at a lot of other librarian websites where they were sharing their lists, but ultimately I chose my genres based on the collection that was in front of me. I thought the fiction section was easier to categorize than what I needed to consider in the nonfiction section. At first, I wasn't sure which genre categories to use, so I looked at those lists, and as I pulled books to look at their genre, I put them in a pile accordingly. So these piles began to grow, and by the time I worked my way through all of the A and B authors in my fiction section, I now knew my categories. They were pretty solid, and these are the categories I ended up with that you can see here. So there's not a lot of categories. I had a very small fiction section compared to nonfiction, but these were the ones that were represented in my collection. Next, in listing your genres, consider how your genres might be related and how that might connect with student interests. For example, students who like to read realistic fiction might also be interested in historical fiction. So maybe making some note of how the genres are related will help you in later steps. Another category you see in this picture is award winners. So do you want to have an award winners category where those books actually live on a shelf and have a call number that's fitting to that? This can get really tricky when it comes to labeling these books because a book could be a mystery and an award winner. So in my library, the decisions I made here were not to have a special shelving category for these books. The award-winning books were a part of their genre, their original genre. But I did have a separate display case that I sometimes use to highlight award-winning books. So next, think about how you'll represent the genre categories on your spine labels. Which actual words will you use on those labels and even on the signs in the library? So for example, for the horror category, will you use the word horror or will you use scary? And yes, I did put books into piles as I was forming this list of genres. I knew this was going to be necessary, but I didn't want to disrupt students' access to books, so I saved this step for my last 3 weeks of the school year. And during this time, students are not normally allowed to check out books anyway because we're trying to get them all back before the end of the school year. So that period of time was the perfect time to begin piling books and noting categories. So for this first phase of the genreification process, there are really 3 main tasks. Inventory your collection, decide how much to genreify, and list your genres. Once you've done this, you're ready to start the physical reorganization.